The next step would be to take some double-sided tape and open up that seam allowance on the interior upper contrast piece. So just adding tape right to the seam allowance of this piece here. And do so on the other side and also on the other side of the bag as well. Okay, now we are going to take the paper off of the tape and we're going to open up that seam allowance and just stick it down like that. So that's open, and you can also put a clip here just to take some of the tension off. Okay, so both sides are open now. Grab the exterior of your bag next, and we are going to place the exterior inside the interior, making sure that the side that we want to be the back of our bag goes right up against the side that we want to be the back on the exterior as well. So this is my front. I have my label here, my handmade tag, and so that means that this side is the back, and I'm just going to feed that exterior down into the liner with right sides together. So the right side of the exterior is right up against the right side of the liner, and we're going to start on the edges. We're going to line up the center snip that we made in the exterior piece right up with the liner seam that we just opened, and do so again on the other side. Now would be the time to make sure that your strap connector hardware is pointing down, just to keep that from interfering with your presser foot when you do this top seam. So just continue along the top, clipping together all of your center seams and just working your way around the top edge of your bag. Okay, the top of our bag is clipped all the way around, and we are now going to go to our sewing machine and sew this at 1/2 inch all the way around. I have now sewn all the way across the top edge of the bag at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, going kind of slow around the corners to make sure that they are smooth and that they remain at a 1/2 inch all the way around. Next, we're going to take pinking shears and just cut away the seam allowances right at the curves. So where the seam allowance curves the most, we're just going to take some of that bulk out. It is now time to birth your bag. It should not be too difficult since we left a fairly large hole in the bottom of the bag. Just pull your exterior through the bottom of your liner, being careful not to rip any of your stitches. But it's a fairly easy birth. And now your exterior and your interior are both right side out. You're going to reach in through that hole in the base of the liner and push out all of the corners and curves of the top edge of your bag. Push the liner into the bag. So I'm going to make sure all of the corners are pushed as far as they can go inside the bag. And then with this top edge, I am going to kind of roll the seam in my fingers just to kind of get it as far open as I can, and then I'm just gonna put a clip an inch along, clipping as I go and getting this seam to be as open as possible. Now, as I said before, this vinyl is a little thicker than I typically use. So what I'm gonna do on the parts where there is extra bulk because of the seam, I'm actually gonna squeeze those with pliers, and I'll show that to you in a second. These are the pliers that I like to use to squeeze some of the bulk out of my seams. They're completely smooth along the plates of the pliers, not serrated like some pliers are. So when you squeeze, it doesn't leave a mark on your vinyl. If you are worried about it though, you can take a scrap piece of vinyl, something like this, and put it over your seam and then squeeze that way. And that is significantly less bulky now. All right, so now we are going to take this over to the machine and top stitch along the top edge. I like to start with my needle down in the back seam right here. Start with long tails pulled from your needle, put your needle down in the seam, and then go all the way around and stop with your needle down in the seam again and pull long tails a second time so that you can tie it off, and I'll show you how to tie off as well. Okay, our top stitching is done around the entire edge of the bag, and we are left with 4 long thread tails. So what you're gonna need is a needle. I like to use a really long needle. Feed the needle up through the hole where you started and stopped your stitch line. Feed it up through the hole and in between the layers, the 2 layers of the vinyl, the interior and the exterior. Feed it up through, and I like to thread the needle once it's already fed through because it's so long that I don't want my threads to pop out while I'm trying to get the needle to go through the layers. A needle this size is typically really easy to thread because the eye is so big. So both of these threads can go through at the same time, and I just pull them up. There we go. So those threads are now in between those 2 layers, and we're gonna do the same thing for the 2 threads on the inside. So now you have 4 threads that are in between the layers. I am going to split them and give them a couple knots and pull really tight so that that knot sinks down deep in between those layers. All right, and then I always want, especially with the thicker thread, I always want to leave the tails long. I don't want to cut them off right at the knot because I feel like that will unravel really easily. So I'm gonna feed the needle back down through the layers, making sure not to catch the interior or the exterior vinyl as I'm doing this. So feed it down through the layers. Now my needle is in between the interior and the exterior. And then I'm gonna thread this needle. All 4 threads, and then reach in through your zipper pocket, through the opening in your zipper pocket, and pull the needle through. There it goes. So now all of your threads are now deep in the inside of your bag, and there's no way that those can get back out. And now you can snap your snaps and take a look at your bag so far. Next, we're going to be closing up the hole in the base and the opening in the zipper pocket. What we're going to do next is open up the zipper in the liner, and we're going to reach through the zipper pocket liner, grab onto the bottom of the interior and pull it through the pocket. So now you can see this right here is the zipper pocket liner, and this right here is the actual liner of the bag, and here's the opening that we just birthed. So what we're going to do now is just close up this opening, which shouldn't be difficult at all. We already started it with the about 1.5 to 2 inch seam that we did along the bottom. Just clip this closed and sew that at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, we have sewn across the bottom of the bag. We are now going to just trim down that seam allowance about halfway. All right, so push it back through and make sure that everything looks good. There's no real puckering. It's all contained. All right. So next we're going to take the zipper pocket liner and we are going to turn it inside itself. I like to open up the side seams and then turn it about 1/2 inch in on itself. Like that, and then fold it together. So that gives a nice clean fold. Clip that and do the same on the other side. Open the seam allowance, fold it down about 1/2 inch, like that, and then fold it together. And then just continue folding and clipping the two sides together all the way across like that. And we are now going to stitch across the edge here, but make sure that you are using a short stitch length and also that you get as close to the edge as you can while still capturing both edges. So after this stitch, we are almost done.